clever pun. The conversation.
I'm prematurely aged 11 years, and I'm living inside a cow. So far, everything is going exactly to plan.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I am Malik. Hello.
Mike!
Hyle! It's good to hear your beautiful voice.
I haven't talked with you since the day Donkey Kong Bananza was revealed.
I know. And now it's like the day after Bananza got revealed a second time.
Yes. We are recording this the day after the Donkey Kong Bananza Direct. The day after I did a live episode of The Kongversation about the Donkey Kong Bananza Direct with Dustin. And I'm still going. I'm still talking about Donkey Kong. Can you believe it? I'm not tapped out yet.
Give it time.
No, I mean, it's been 13 years. At this point, I don't know if I will ever shut up about Donkey Kong, which apparently bothers some people on the internet. Because
I know.
we're lost in the sauce of the Donkey Kong hype cycle right now. And let me tell you, my friend, I have never felt it thicker or creamier than it is right now. Like, even compared to Tropical Freeze, even compared to Returns, I can barely move. This sauce is so dense.
I agree with you, yeah. So what did you put in that sauce?
What is Nintendo putting in the sauce? They're putting in references to... My God! Okay, so we did the episode yesterday, right? And then this morning, as they're wont to do, the so-called DK detective Skips, the one who found the northern Kremlings on the maps in Bananza, they've saw another thing in the direct. They picked up on something that nobody caught yesterday, or at least nobody went public with catching, or at least went public in anywhere that we've seen, and realized that the silhouette of Donkey Kong Island appears on the UI of the fast travel screen in Bananza. So when you're using the elevators to fast travel between the layers, you have this curvature of the Earth, and it's showing like you're going deep into the Earth's crust down towards the planet core. And you see Ingot Isle at the top. And then off to the right, some distance away, is a shape, another silhouette. And it looks like any generic Rare style island at first glance, you know, just big and tall, the big mountain on it. But then you look closer and it's got the cowlick, and you're like, oh my God, that's Donkey Kong Island. And then you compare it to past renditions of Donkey Kong Island, specifically Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's Final Smash for King K. Rool, where he unleashes the Blast-O-Matic on it. But yes, they have restored the Donkey Kong face to Donkey Kong Island.
My God. And like, we're talking a lot about cows. First the cow, now we're talking about cowlicks. lot of bovine stuff.
We are racing with the cows. We are licking the cows. This is the summer of the cow, if it's anything but the summer of Donkey Kong Bananza hype. So, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. We are in such a heavy Donkey Kong hype period. And I said, you know, this is probably eclipsing what Tropical Freeze was, just as far as even a recognition from Nintendo. I mean, they are really pushing Bananza in a way that I feel like they didn't get behind Tropical Freeze to the extent that they did. I mean, they didn't, like, try to smother Tropical Freeze under a pillow or anything, but...
Oh, God.
It wasn't that harsh, but it did feel like Tropical Freeze didn't take priority. It got bumped from the November slot to February, and all sorts of things behind that. But it's because Donkey Kong Bonanza is internally developed, Nintendo EPD. People are still asking, who's developing Bonanza? And I'm like, really? Really?
I know they haven't said it, but does it really need to be said?
I think in this day and age, people need things spelled out for them because they are incapable of putting together pieces. And we've seen that quite a bit in the last 24 hours or so as well. But one thing that makes this a direct comparison to the Tropical Freeze hype cycle, and that we know we are in a genuine Donkey Kong hype cycle right now, is Kotaku is publishing shitty takes about Donkey Kong. And
here we go.
Like, I never thought I would live to see the day yet again where I can complain about a Kotaku-based Donkey Kong article. But yeah, they published something yesterday that says, Nintendo doesn't worry about Donkey Kong lore, and neither should you.
Interesting.
The header says, don't take any of this stuff too seriously and just have fun punching rocks, you dumb shithead. I might have
that's what
I might have put some English on that at the end there. But yeah, it's like, really? Really, Kotaku? Like, I know that, oh God, I've been talking a lot about this since I came out of my work bubble yesterday when I finished the Kongversation and I was getting it up and I was starting to be exposed to some of the takes and some of the discourse and some of the rancor about Donkey Kong Bonanza and the Direct and the Pauline reveal, and just the amount of people who are either being willfully obtuse that this isn't supposed to be a mystery and that we're supposed to be questioning this, and Nintendo isn't just going, LOL, YOLO, let's just make Pauline a little girl because who the fuck cares, dumb monkey game. That's not a thing, people. That's not what's happening here. And I've talked about it with DK Vine's staff. I've talked about it with friends of the show, like Josh from Off the Geek Critique. And we all have our takes and our theories about why this is eliciting the response. And I think it just depends on what part of the audience, what sector of Nintendo fandom and video game journalist, what takes they have depending on their perspective, because you've got the, let's call them wiki-brained folk who think that unless everything is laid out in complete detail for you, then it doesn't make sense. Like, they're incapable of, I don't want to keep harping about media literacy, Malik, because it's only going to get worse. It's only it's only going to devolve from here. But like, this is a mystery in Bonanza. The young Pauline is not just tossed off because Nintendo doesn't care. Like, it's going to be explained. It's all going to make sense by the end of the game. I am sure of that.
Yeah, I'm not scared.
What are we doing here? And beyond that, then you get the people who are looking at those who are actually speculating and having fun speculating, who are taking this as a mystery and are having fun trying to work out, well, is Pauline de-aged? Is it a time travel situation? Is it not Pauline, but a daughter, a relative, or some sort of facsimile of Pauline? Could it be a prequel? I don't think it's a prequel, like, as far as setting, because we've seen too much stuff that suggests it takes place in the here and now. And, but, and we don't know yet, but people are having fun debating. And then you've got people who aren't Donkey Kong fans who maybe are a little put out that Donkey Kong is getting all this attention because they've never considered Donkey Kong to be one of Nintendo's premier brands. And they're like, why are you having fun with this? This is just a game where you punch rocks with a big monkey.
It's like, it's not that serious. Or
It's not that serious. These are the people who are just now learning that there's a Donkey Kong Country theme park. These are the people who just haven't been paying attention to all the work Nintendo's been doing for the past 7 years, building to this moment and reestablishing Donkey Kong as a brand that, yeah, they want people to be invested in. So, I don't know. I'm just a little bit like, I feel like a cockroach right now. Like when there's a cockroach party in the kitchen and then somebody turns on the lights and you're just exposed, because we have been having a cockroach party in the kitchen in the dark for the last 11 years. The Donkey Kong fandom has. We have just been operating out of sight, out of mind, having a grand old time getting by. And now all of a sudden, the larger population in the household are noticing us, and they're like, ew.
But we're not going to scatter.
No, we're staying put. They can try to crush us all they want. They're not going to kill us.
We're cockroaches. Hello.
Right, we survive. We are the cockroaches of Nintendo fandom. I mean, maybe that's Earthbound. Maybe that's Mother fandom, because they're the ones who have really gotten by with nothing. So, again,
that's true.
Once again, I would like to say hats off to Earthbound/Mother fandom. We think we have it rough, but you actually are the ones in the trenches day in and day out fighting the good fight and preserving your way of life. So, thank you.
One day I will play Earthbound and I will feel the same way as they do.
I don't have time because they're releasing Donkey Kong Bonanza on July 17th, Malik.
I'm not going to play it within the next month, maybe before I die. Definitely.
Before you die, yeah. And we just established that probably won't happen because we are the cockroaches.
Right.
Embrace it.
Not by outside forces, but like my body failing me, which it's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm one of them long-lived cockroaches, the ones that lived like 30 plus years.
We are powered by the banandium root at the planet core. We will live forever. So, I bring all this up not to just talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza in an episode entitled 30 Years of Donkey Kong Land, but in the midst of all of this excitement for Donkey Kong Bonanza, this renewed fervor about the Donkey Kong series, I find it fascinating that, last year was the 30th anniversary of Donkey Kong Country, last November, and it was a big deal for us, and Nintendo acknowledged it, which felt amazing because they kind of bypassed the 40th anniversary of just Donkey Kong back in 2021, and it was clear that, they were trying to get people wet and wild for Donkey Kong again because of the theme park, because of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, and we hoped back then because of the rumored EPD developed Donkey Kong game, which turns out to be the case. But the 30th anniversary of DKC was a time for reflection and celebration, and oh my god, I'm getting so old. But here we are in June of 2025, and we are rapidly approaching the 30th anniversary of the next entry in the DKU, in the Donkey Kong series. And it's one that was overlooked for many years. I would say until last November when it was released on NSO. It's kind of been rediscovered a little bit since then. But Donkey Kong Land, it's the second game of the modern Donkey Kong lineage. And it was the bridge between the first two Donkey Kong Country games. Now, Malik, we have discussed Donkey Kong Land almost to the point of nausea here at DK Vine and on the Kongversation. I bring it up quite a bit.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Not just on the Kongversation, it routinely factors into my YouTube series, DKU Lore Tour. That's right, DKU Lore Tour, because Nintendo does worry about Donkey Kong lore, Rare worries about Donkey Kong lore, and so should you. But I always bring up Donkey Kong Land because Donkey Kong Land is such a fascinating entry in the Pantheon. And look, we've done a spotlight for this. We have done the Why Donkey Kong Land Still Matters episode back in 2020. Malik, my God, you and I, together, we just discussed the entire trilogy as kind of like a box of chocolates, like just a nice little sampler of chat about Donkey Kong Land games last season when they all came out to NSO.
Yeah, that was a blast. It feels like it was just yesterday.
Oh, God. Just yesterday for me feels like it was a week ago because it was such a long workday for me. So, with that in mind, I was like, what? We've got so much going on with Donkey Kong Bananza. Do I really have time to devote to talk about Donkey Kong Land yet again? And I thought, well, the game means so much to me that I feel like so many people traditionally overlook it when they talk about the classic Donkey Kong Country era. They just focus on the original trilogy for the Super Nintendo, and they kind of dismiss these games. And I thought, I can't be one of those people. I just can't. Like, what's next? Writing articles for Kotaku? I'm not gonna do it.
Ew.
So here we go again. Let's break out our banana yellow tinted glasses and look back 30 years ago to Donkey Kong Land on this episode of the Kongversation.
And this feels especially special to me because, if we're counting like street dates or whatever, it says like Donkey Kong Land 1 came out June 26th. I am exactly 1 week older than Donkey Kong Land.
Wait a minute, Malik. Is this your birthday today?
Kong's out of the bag.
Oh my God! Oh wait, Malik's birthday is today, everyone. This wasn't planned. I didn't know this.
It was not planned. No.
Oh my!
I kept it a secret.
Oh my God! We gotta sing the song. I can't sing. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
I don't know.
Happy birthday,
anything's fine.
Malik! Happy birthday, Malik! Happy birthday, Malik! Let's talk about DKL.
And you smell like one too.
All right. Oh my God.
Nice.
Oh my God. Well, you when I asked you if you could do this on Thursday, and you were like, "Sure," you couldn't say like, "Oh, that's actually my birthday, so maybe not Thursday."
I didn't want to burden nobody, but I mean, I got nothing else to do, so I was like, what better way to celebrate 30 years of life than talking about Donkey Kong with my good friend Hyle?
Man, 30 years old. You were born 1 week before this game released. I mean, God, like that's staggering to me. I was just bewildered that young Pauline's only 13 and she's only had 2 Donkey Kong games in her lifetime. And, I feel old compared to everyone.
That's okay. But I'm slowly getting to where you are now. I mean,
slowly, yeah.
You don't have to, slowly, ever so slowly.
Eventually, yes. Somebody will catch up to the age I'm currently at. Sure. That's the way it happens.
Not at the same time as you. I won't be 40 when you're 40, but
although, we have no idea what's happening with timeline anymore, and maybe an older version of you will come back.
He'll be about the same height as me, because people think I'm 13 anyways.
well, we're going to celebrate Malik's birthday today. We're going to talk about Donkey Kong Land. But I just wanted to quickly plug a couple things. You know, if you are jazzed about Donkey Kong Bonanza, or you just really love the Donkey Kong series in general, or the greater Donkey Kong universe, the extended Rare side of things, then be sure to follow us on Blue Sky. I have been active on Blue Sky this week, posting lots of thoughts about Bonanza, lots of hot takes about Bonanza, pointing out things. Of course, I also am always promoting future episodes of The Kongversation there, plugging DK Vine articles, reposting things I find interesting from others. So yeah, follow us on Blue Sky. And be sure you subscribe on Twitch and YouTube as well to keep up with everything we're discussing, all of my brilliant lore videos, which everyone at Kotaku should watch to get reacquainted with how the Donkey Kong series works. Yeah. We are also on Patreon. We are almost entirely funded by our patrons. I want to thank you, DK Vine patrons, so much for making the dream of independent Donkey Kong journalism a reality. Support DK Vine at patreon.com/DK Vine. And of course, for these regular episodes of The Kongversation, we do live stream them to our $5 and up patrons. Hello, $5 and up patrons joining us right now. A lot of people are saying happy birthday to you, Malik.
Oh, that's too kind. No, really, it's too kind.
We have Chocolate Milk Drinker, Me Muppet, March Rose, Just Andre. They are all wishing you the happiest of happy days. SM Monaco is there as well. Hello. So,
hello, everybody.
Malik, you are also known as the Cartoon Gamer.
Yeah, I think I am.
Little trivia fact about Malik. Yes, there is actually Malik lore. Malik is known as the Cartoon Gamer, and you should care. Malik, what's happening right now over on your YouTube channel or just in general?
Let's see. Currently, I'm doing some Pokemon-related stuff, so if any of you guys like Pokemon, it's pretty good. And even if you don't, you might still like it. It's still got my brand of weird humor and references that people other than me won't understand. But I will be, when Bananza comes out, I will hopefully have some kind of review or, I wanted to say retrospective, but you know what I mean. Some nice big old video on Bananza is probably coming.
Yeah?
So, yeah, good stuff is in the works.
I'm excited. I love your videos. Look, your Rare Myth video, you did a video...
Oh, yeah.
couple weeks or a month or two back where you exposed persistent rare limited myths that the internet just refuses to stop believing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to put together, and if anyone hasn't seen it yet, please give it a watch. It's called, Rareware Myths the Internet Refuses to Shut Up About, with shut up in all caps, because I got a little frustrated. I was like, I need to draw people's eyes to this somehow. But the reception has been pretty good so far, and I'm really happy that a lot of people are like, oh wow, I never knew this, I never knew that. I can't believe all this was just angry discourse from like 2010, maybe 5 years ago. Wow. Yeah. So yeah.
What I love about that video in particular, Malik, is you title it Rareware Myths, and the first one you debunk is that the studio was never called Rareware.
Mm-hmm. That was the first one I wanted to get out of the way. I was like, psych! It's not Rareware. I played you, and I played myself.
Yeah. And I completely get why people think it was called Rareware, considering that's how they were branded for 8 years, a little close to 9 years. because Grunty's Revenge was the last one to bear that logo in 2003. But it really is just like once, like it kind of like, I try not to get aggravated by it when I still see it, because I see it all the time, and I'm like, it's actually Rare Limited. They made Rareware, as in Rare Software, but Rareware was never the name of the studio. But yeah.
Yeah, I can't get mad at people who still say that, and that's like one of the reasons I called it Rareware Rumors, because if I called it Rare Rumors, or if I made a video on rare games, people would think, you mean like elusive games, hard to find? This is just easier for everybody, but I always have to make it a point. It's like,
right.
They're called Rare Limited, but Rareware, it's just easier for everybody to understand, because rare is kind of a term that you can use anywhere.
True, yeah. And yeah, I've got 2 videos in the works right now, and I would have liked to have gotten more work done on them this week, but then there was a big Donkey Kong Bananza direct in the middle of the week, so kind of derailed a little bit, kind of took me off track, because I had to focus on, well, the big Donkey Kong Bananza direct in the middle of the week. But yeah, I'm simultaneously working on 2 videos at the moment. One is a DKU lore tour video, so timely, am I right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Finally, something timely.
Me Muppet says, I prefer Rareware. Chocolate Milk Drinker says, I just say Rareware because, I don't know.
I've heard some people say Wareware, and that's where I draw the line. It's like, oh my god, you're not even reading it.
It should be like Rareware, like you're a werewolf, like Rareware. All right, Malik. Donkey Kong Land. Let's do it. Donkey Kong Land was released 1 week after Malik was released.
Yeah. I like that term.
For the Game Boy, as a Super Game Boy Advance cart on June 26th, 1995. And just running down the list of credits really quick, because unlike Nintendo, we do credit people who worked on stuff.
Yeah, imagine that.
The lead programmer was Paul Makachek. By the way, last year I did do an interview with Paul Makachek here on the Kongversation, where we discussed Donkey Kong Land, among many other projects from Rare. So go listen to that, learn a little bit about Donkey Kong Land's development history. But yeah, the lead programmer was Paul Makachek. Game design by Andrew Collard, one of the unsung heroes of the Donkey Kong series. Andrew Collard. Love to interview him. Oh my god. The stories he could tell. Support programming, Oliver Norton and Steve Patrick. Scenery, Dean Smith. Sprites, and some of these may have just carried over from Donkey Kong Country. I don't know if some of these people actually worked on Donkey Kong Land, but Kev Bayless, Kerry Gunn, Steve Males, Mark Stevenson, and Carl Tilley, with additional graphics by Neil Cook, and graphic manipulation by Chris Peel and Martin Wakely. Of course, the music was by Graham Norgate. Graham Norgate composed some fantastic original tunes for this, as well as renditions of music from Donkey Kong Country itself.
Oh, heck yeah.
The testing was done, internal Rare testing was done by John Hasty, and I'm not going to be hasty, it's an episode of The Kongversation, I'm going to take my time. Gary Richards, another unsung hero of the DKU, Hugh Ward, and Paul Weaver. The game concept was by Tim Stamper, but I'm pretty sure what Tim Stamper did was, Donkey Kong Country is going to sell a lot of copies on the Super Nintendo. We should do a Game Boy version.
Yeah, that's pretty much all he said from what I've heard. It was like, yo, make me this.
Yeah, it's like, what if we made a second game? Game concept. There you go.
There we go. And then I'm like top billing or like at the very end. It's that easy.
So Unfortunately, I can't say I got Donkey Kong Land the day it came out. What I did, Malik, because I was a little kid, not as little as you, to be fair.
Yeah.
Come to find out, Malik was 1 week old, but Donkey Kong Land was released, and because it was coming out, like, the first week of summer, the first week of calendar summer, not cultural summer, but the first week of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, like smack dab in the dry zone. No holidays where you would be bestowed gifts. My birthday is November 22nd, which works out well for when Donkey Kong Country games were traditionally released, but not so much for a game in June. So I had to save up my allowance that I would get from doing things like mowing the lawn. I would have to save up my allowance because I'm not a trust fund kid. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I did have privilege. I mean, I was from the generation when there was still an American middle class, but, you know, I was still not like just bestowed lavish presents for the hell of it, you know.
Right.
But I was the only child, so I could finagle my way towards that goal. So I would get an allowance. So I wanted Donkey Kong Land, and I had to save up for it. So I put it on layaway because that way I could actually fiscally put my money towards the game, and I wouldn't get distracted with cheap and tawdry sundry wares that would just pop up. Like, ooh, there's an action figure that would be really cool to own. And no, I could stay focused on Donkey Kong Land. I had Donkey Kong Land on layaway at the department store, so I would be putting my money towards that. Oh, yeah. How quaint. What simple times those were.
I just like how all those just 90s words, and they just have cute little rhymes in between, like Rareware, layaway. It's just, I just like them. It's just nice. Simpler times.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have those conventions to remember things, right? And rhyming helps you remember words and phrases and sticks in your brain that way. So yeah, it was a couple weeks after Donkey Kong Land came out. It was July. It must have been, it was still early July, but it was July that I finally got Donkey Kong Land. And as I've shared on this podcast in the past, I picked it up from layaway the very same day I bought the July issue of Nintendo Power at the same store. And Donkey Kong Land was on the cover. So that's why I was able to convince my mom. I was like, you know, I bought Donkey Kong Land with my money, but then she bought me that issue of Nintendo Power. It's like, oh yeah, you should have the magazine that's about this, and it'll teach you how to play the game well. So
Nice.
That issue of Nintendo Power was very formative in my developing Donkey Kong fandom and eventually zealotry, because that issue of Nintendo Power also revealed to me the announcement of Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, from the very first E3 that May. So yeah, like, I went home with Donkey Kong Land and the knowledge that a actual sequel to Donkey Kong Country was coming later that year. So it really served as the sinew of my Donkey Kong fandom. It really held everything together between the original Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2. And it expanded the hype for me beyond the confines of just that first release, that singular game. Like, Donkey Kong Country was a huge, huge cultural event when it came out. People forget, or people willfully misremember, what a big deal it was in 1994. And I mean, it was the game of that holiday season and well into 1995, especially if you were probably younger, or if you were in a family that had kids. Because I know a lot of parents also really got into Donkey Kong Country because it was something they got their kids, and then they were like, wow, I've never seen a video game that looks like this. This is amazing. Or sounds like this, for that matter, especially if you weren't a PC gamer, you were just, a Nintendo family, buying Nintendo consoles. Nintendos, as they called them back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. It wasn't the NES. It wasn't the NES. It was...
Do you have Nintendo?
It was the Nintendo. That's all it was. It was just the Nintendo. And then you had the Super Nintendo. So I honestly miss that. I honestly miss how simple that was. And I know I've shared this too, but I really wish they would have just kept going, kept upping the ante. Super Nintendo. We almost had the Nintendo Ultra 64 before they dropped the Ultra, but
of course,
Ultra Nintendo, do it. Godlike Nintendo. I don't know. Like, at what point?
Where would we be now?
Yeah, I don't know at what point you couldn't keep progressing and advancing, but yeah, like. Donkey Kong Country was a huge deal, but it was just one game. Yes, it reimagined and reinvented the Donkey Kong series from the arcade trilogy and, picking up the baton from Donkey Kong 94 for the Game Boy. But Donkey Kong Country was just a game, and it really did leave a sizable impact on me, and I love that game, but there wasn't a series. There wasn't a franchise behind it. But I knew I would want to get the sequel for it. I knew that I would want to get every sequel for it because there really hadn't been a video game that had come along until that point that I went just so hard on.
You went bananas for it.
I was barreled over by it. You might say.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I had beaten maybe one or two easier games in my life. I actually put in the time to beat it. Sans Game Genie, sans any cheat codes. I just beat it. But it was few and far between. Even something like Super Mario Brothers, which was the very first game I'd ever honestly beaten. I still did warp zones. I still, I didn't actually play through it from level 1-1 to level 8-4. So Donkey Kong Country was the very first game that I completed everything without skipping ahead, without the benefit of a Game Genie or a Game Shark. I just got good at it. And it was the first game that really demanded that of me, that it demanded my attention and my focus, and it earned my love and admiration. And so I was like, I've got to get every game. At the time, I didn't know what that would entail. I didn't know that that would mean that this version of Donkey Kong would be appearing in various Mario games. Super Smash Brothers would have been a laughable concept back in 1994. I never thought that we would have such complexities as the Donkey Kong universe. Here's Royston the Goldfish. I never thought Platonic would be a thing. But, at the time, It was just this one thing I am super into. I am all about this one thing. Now, when you're a kid, you're into a lot of things. It wasn't my only interest. It wasn't my only passion in late 1994 to mid 1995. You know what else demanded my attention that summer, Malik?
Mario, right?
Batman Forever.
Oh God, that's one of the bad ones, right?
It's not the bad one, and it has...
It's not Batman and Robin. Yeah.
Yeah, it has its defenders, and there's that whole, like, oh, they should release the Schumacher cut, but it's the movie that started to progress the series into a far campier direction, and, But in 1995, when I was still a wee little child boy, I loved it because I loved Batman, and here was a Batman movie with Robin in it, and the Jim Carrey at the height of his celebrity as the Riddler, and it was just everywhere that summer. It was like Donkey Kong Country was in November, a cultural event. So I was like into Batman forever, and Donkey Kong Land was just kind of in my peripheral view. I was like, oh yeah, I need to get that. I need to get that. But that's why I put Donkey Kong Land on layaway, because I would blow my money on Batman Forever action figures. In fact, I didn't buy any Batman Forever action figures. It was the first time I was like, no, I don't need these Batman toys. Like, Yeah. It's part of growing up, but
I guess.
Yeah, like, I look back at Donkey Kong Land, and I often say I would not be the Donkey Kong fan. I would not be the DKU fan that I am today if it wasn't for that game coming along and serving as the bridge between Country and Country 2.
That's wild. That's just wild to think about. Just that this cute little game in a banana yellow cartridge changed your life forever like that.
For better or for worse. Yeah, it's...
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to me, so for worse in some cases.
In the live stream, just Andre says omnidimensional Nintendo as how they could have kept progressing the naming convention.
And I replied with Nintendo.
Nintendo. Yes. Chocolate Milk Drinker says, I wish I knew how big of a deal it was besides the Kongversation. Well, that's why we're here. We're here to pass on the wisdom through the ages. Don't feel bad because you were born later, because you weren't born years before Donkey Kong Country or a week before Donkey Kong Land. You are privy to things now that later generations won't know, and you'll have to share it with them. So soak in everything right now, Chocolate Milk Drinker. Soak in this Bananza hype cycle.
That's how we do things here. That's how it happens. People think that some people think that I was there with this stuff, with all this stuff, but I'm a bit tongue tied on my as a 30-year-old. But I'm just like, what was I saying? Some people think that I was there when it comes to all this Rareware stuff and talking about it. It's like, no, I just absorbed this stuff and I really like it. I think I know more. I know what a bite size is. And people who were there when they were playing DKC, they're like, what's that thing? Is it Piranha? It's like, no, it's bite size. You learn the name.
I at first I thought you were referring to like the bite size of the game, because remember when that was a thing? Remember people used to really care about how many megabytes a game was, and it would be bits. A selling point. Like, it was a selling point that Donkey Kong Country was 32. 32! It's a 16-bit cartridge. What is happening?
It's like, holy crap, guys, 32 megs. What's a meg? I don't know, but it's got 32 of them. Aren't you excited?
I mean, it was even, I mean, that's why it's the Nintendo 64. 64 megabytes. So, like, it's crazy to me that, like, that really fell by the wayside after that era. And back then, we just always thought that was just going to be the selling point. Like, oh yeah, this game in the future will be 790. That's how good this game is. That's how powerful this game is.
And by that number, you mean dollars, right? Not bits.
Damn this Switch 2 pricing.
Look how high the price is. It's that good, right? You want it.
Me Muppet says parallel dimension Nintendo. Perry the parallel dimension bird would be a great animal buddy. Because, Donkey Kong Bonanza, we're going underneath the earth. So how do we, expand beyond there? Well, you have the multiverse. Donkey Kong can traverse the multiverse and meet Perry the parallel dimension bird.
I love that. I would eat that up so much.
And yes, Chocolate Milk Drinker says, born 10 months before Donkey Kong Country returns.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, it is such a foundational part of my life. And look, I know Donkey Kong Land is wonky. I know.
Wonky Kong Land.
It's Wonky Kong Land, baby, but it's one of those things where it is such a product of its time, and thankfully I am of its time, so I can remember the way things used to be and how, a handheld version of a game or a handheld counterpart to a game series would never play as well as the console version, or it would be just slightly different or off or weird. And you accepted that. You anticipated that. It's kind of weird to think about, younger generations of the Switch era never having that dichotomy, never having that split between console gaming and handheld gaming. And I honestly loved it. I reveled in that because it was fascinating to me how a game or a style of game could then be translated in a handheld form. But Malik, I'm talking about myself here. I'm talking about my own experiences with Donkey Kong Land. You obviously had a far different story about Donkey Kong Land because you were not playing this at 1 week of age.
No. As much as I like to, build myself up and make myself look professional, which I'm clearly not.
Well, it's just because you're turning 30 and your body is failing you.
It is. I got a trick knee and other things. I have to go to the chiropractor because my back is all kinds of whack.
Okay, can I just say I've known you for a while now. We've been friends for a while. We've been colleagues for a while, and I've never heard you say anything to the extent of "I have a trick knee." That's like Cranky Kong dialogue. What the hell is happening to you?
It's been a thing where it's just, my left knee, I'll just lift it up and I'll just hear cricks and it's what is that? It never goes away. My right leg doesn't do that. So you're well, I guess that's a trick knee, I guess.
When a storm rolls in, you're like, oh, I can feel it in my knee.
Oh, heck yeah. It's oh man, my corn hurts. It must be going to snow. But that's me, yeah. But, my story with Donkey Kong Land is, I didn't know it existed. It's sort of kind of similar to yours, how it kind of changed my life in terms of, what Donkey Kong was, because for the longest time, I only had Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo was the only console I had for, the first 7 or 8 years of my life. And then a friend of mine had Donkey Kong Land. He had a bunch of Game Boy games, and he gave me Donkey Kong Land. And I happened to have a Super Game Boy, so I was like, oh snap, I can play this. And I had no idea what it was, because I didn't know Donkey Kong Country 2 or 3 existed as well, because I didn't have any subscriptions to Nintendo Power. It wasn't until 2004 when I saw a commercial for Donkey Kong Country 2 on Game Boy Advance. I was like, wait, there's more? Are you kidding me? But yeah, Donkey Kong Land. Yeah, I knew about DK Land before DKC 2 and 3, and I was like, oh, this must be the sequel to Donkey Kong Country. It's gotta be. That's just the law. And I didn't know the story or any of the anything about it beforehand. Again, no Nintendo Power magazine subscription or anything. I just played it and I was like, okay, this is Donkey Kong Country 2, I guess, but they're not calling it Country 2. It's just like Donkey Kong insert thing here, and I guess this is Land. And yeah, that was the one that was like, okay, there's more to this. This is kind of cool. And again, this was like in 2003. So, I mean, I did have a PS2 at this point, but I was in my own little bubble where I was just like, whatever gets thrown at me, I'll just play it and I'll just take it. I played Toy Story on Game Boy at the same time in like 2003, and that game sucks, but I played it because I was like, what else am I gonna do? Go outside, read a book? I mean,
What
I
else
could,
am I gonna
but
do?
but Toy Story on Game Boy.
I literally have no choice in the matter but to play Toy Story for the Game Boy.
I didn't even know there was a Super Nintendo version until like the 2010s. I was like, oh my god, what? I was playing this crappy version forever.
You didn't even know there was a movie called Toy Story at the time.
Oh no, I did. I had Toy Story 1 and 2. I was all over that.
Well, yes, you are the cartoon gamer. The cartoon comes before the gaming. I forgot.
In that case, yes.
Yeah,
that's my story.
I think it's fascinating because a lot of people nowadays would not have played Donkey Kong Land before Donkey Kong Country 2. So I think it's kind of cool that you did experience it in the sequential order. In my mind, the order they're supposed to be experienced in.
Yeah, totally. It just took like, I mean, I've said this before in our previous Donkey Kong Land conversation, but yeah, I experienced it the same way you did and many others did, just, literal years and generations apart. I feel like that could still happen today, but it would be a lot harder to do.
I mean, thankfully it's on NSO now, and in the live stream here, we got Chocolate Milk Drinker, born 10 months before Donkey Kong Country Returns, saying they love Donkey Kong Land. And so it gives me hope. It honestly gives me a little bit of hope. I mean, not for the greater world, but for Donkey Kong. Yeah. For Donkey Kong fandom, Donkey Kong's the one thing I'm optimistic about these days. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Donkey Kong's got a bright future. Nothing else does. But Donkey Kong will take refuge in the DKU. We'll all move to Donkey Kong Island, in our brains. Yeah.
Who's going to tell us no?
Thankfully, it being on NSO. And it's the same thing with Banjo-Tooie being on NSO, or like all these games, they are now available to a far wider audience than they have been in, well, actually, any time in history, given the install base of the Switch and how well the Switch 2 is sold. And, I mean, it exceeds how available Donkey Kong Land was. Because back then, back in 1995, you had to get the cartridge. And yeah, I know, like, ROMs exist and people just, play games that way, but you still have to seek it out. Just the availability of it being there. If you are a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber, it is there. It is there waiting for you to discover, and anybody could just pull it up and play it. And I have noticed that Donkey Kong Land is starting to get recognized more than it has in the entire history of the Kongversation, and I would say in the entire history of DK Vine, except for maybe the first couple years of the website when we were still 4, 5, 6 years removed from its original release. So it's great to see because it's such, like I said, a foundational part of my understanding of Donkey Kong, to the point where I cannot just think in terms of Donkey Kong Country and then Donkey Kong Country 2. In my brain, I always have to stop and be like, the Donkey Kong Land adventure happened between those two games. And it's important. It's an important stepping stone to Donkey Kong Country 2. It gives us our first taste of the Gangplank Galleon as an actual level archetype.
That blew me away. Yeah, I was like, oh, the song continues. For example.
It introduces
and the stage.
Yeah, it introduces the baddie Flotsam as the boss incarnation, first of all. a wild sting as the boss of the Gangplank Galleon, and then we later meet just the drones, the enemy class in DKC2. And it's such a brilliant, I think, building block in what Donkey Kong games were going to be from that point forward. And that is because of the game's story, which, granted, even now in its renewed popularity or its renewed recognition, most people will not know the story of Donkey Kong Land. You have to read the manual. You have to read. I was really pumped when Nintendo promoted it coming to NSO and they explained what the story was. And I was like, yeah, share that.
Yeah, buddy.
Share that beautiful tale. It's probably, is it my favorite story in the DKU? Is it my favorite narrative? And I mean, it's not War and Peace. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's not anything groundbreaking or revolutionary. It's still, oh no, our bananas have been stolen. But it's the way it goes about it. It's so ingenious. And it honestly is so self-aware that I think it makes the wonkiness of Donkey Kong Land this Donkey Kong Country style game that's built on the Battletoads GB engine. It makes the wonkiness of it actually relevant to the plot, because the plot is Cranky Kong is salty. Cranky Kong is so angry about the blockbuster success of Donkey Kong Country, and he can't sleep at night. He can't eat. He's like ignoring calls from Wrinkly, who is, of course, teaching.
Still alive.
Yeah, and Wrinkly's at this time teaching on Crocodile Isle as part of the Kong Kremling outreach program. And, you know, she's not home, but she's calling all the time. But Cranky won't take her calls. She's like, whatever, you know, my wife's going to be around forever. I don't need to talk to her. And he is just consumed with the petty jealousy that his son/grandson and protege Diddy Kong have usurped him. They have met a level of success that he thought was reserved for him. And he knows his glory days are done. He knows that he will never taste the heights of Donkey Kong 1981 ever again. And it is destroying him. So, Cranky, in one of his many bitch sessions towards Donkey and Diddy on the porch of Cranky's cabin, basically says, you know what, the only reason you were able to get your banana horde back and Donkey Kong Country was such a huge success was you did it with state-of-the-art software and hardware. You were on the Super Nintendo. It was a luxury I never had. I bet if you had to do it on an inferior piece of shit system like the Game Boy, you just couldn't, because you were just coasting on that game's good looks and amazing sound. If we brought everything down to the 8-bit level in a monochrome, muddy screen with the beeps and the boops, you could not do it, you fucking fraud. And that's the plot is, yeah, I know we're doing Donkey Kong Country again, but we're doing it within the context of this weird meta-narrative that Cranky Kong can break the fourth wall like Deadpool, and we are just leaning into that. This is what Donkey Kong Land is. It's Donkey Kong Country again, but we're making that work as the semi-sequel to Donkey Kong Country. I had never in my life experienced a game studio meeting me all the way. Like in my younger days, even before I was really like passionately about a video game series. The closest I ever got was Super Mario. And
Right.
I had headcanons even then about Super Mario, but I would always like wonder, like, what if I got like really into a video game series on the ground floor? What if there was a video game series that I was around for that appealed to all of my sensibilities, and I got in from the first game and I just followed it from there? I mean, I was like, that's what I wanted, really. But I never like knew what video game series that would be, because nothing had really come along that spoke to me on such a foundational level until Donkey Kong Country. So, yeah, Kotaku. People really like Donkey Kong. I know it's not your thing, Kotaku writers and editors, but guess what? We are cockroaches. Anyway, so
We know how to have fun.
we know how to have fun with
I'm
our
so
video
sorry.
games. It's more than just punching rocks, you dummies.
Yeah, stupid.
Anyway, I always looked at these Game Boy versions of console games, like Battletoads, for example, or like the Ninja Turtle Game Boy games, or like a more direct comparison would be Mortal Kombat for the Game Boy. You know, the Mortal Kombat version released on the Game Boy is kind of infamous for how bad of a translation it is. And it's just the, Mortal Kombat game with, I think Johnny Cage isn't in it, but it's just on the Game Boy, and it's kind of shitty and miserable. I would look at that and I would be like, if I was really, really into Mortal Kombat, I would nonetheless celebrate the hell out of that Mortal Kombat Game Boy game. And I would even try to work out how it could plausibly be like part of the Mortal Kombat universe. Like, the events of this game are unique in some way to the events of the arcade and the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. And, like, that's the way my brain worked even before Donkey Kong Country ruined me. Like, so I've always been like this. I've always been wired to kind of think outside the box and not focus on just textbook definitions of what games are or they're supposed to be. And I was just always like, yeah, that's what I would do. But here in this video game series that I was like, is this the one? Is this the video game series I'm going to be on board with for my entire life? The very first time it has a follow-up and it's a Game Boy game like I had long thought about. It's actually going out of its way so I don't have to do that. It's actually going out of its way and saying, yes, this all works in the canon of Donkey Kong. And I thought that was the greatest thing. I thought that was brilliant. And the fact that Cranky Kong is the instigator, and they use Cranky Kong, who doesn't actually appear anywhere in Donkey Kong Land, but Cranky Kong in universe calls up King K. Rool, and he orchestrates a second Banana Horde heist because he's able to goad Donkey Kong into agreeing to it. That
feels like something somebody made up, but like a kid playground rumors. But it's like it's real,
or it sounds like something we would have made up at DK Vine and tried to push on people in like 1999 or 2000. Like, no, this is the story to Donkey Kong Land.
Trust us. Trust us, guys. This is real.
But no, it was the real story. And I think that really was what set in, what really solidified it all for me. Like, yeah, this is what I have to devote my life to. Obviously, I wasn't thinking in terms of like DK Vine or actually doing any of this for a career. I just was thinking like, I've got to just stay with this series for as long as I possibly can. And
yeah, you're like, I'll start off with a shrine. I'll start off small and then I'll think about it later.
Yeah. But you wonder like why Donkey Kong fans and how Donkey Kong fandom has developed for the last 30 years in particular, why we do care about lore, why we do obsess about this kind of stuff. It's because Rare cared about it. It's because Rare really cemented how we thought about this, because they took the time, they took the care, they thought outside the box. They, being the second or third generation of video game developers, they really understood the conventions because they grew up with them, so they knew how to subvert them.
Yeah, it's like you can't expect, I guess there's some people who enjoy things that where the creators didn't care in the slightest, but I feel like that is the exception rather than the rule, where it's like, the reason I care about these things is because the people who made them cared, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, how can you expect me to care about something if you don't care about it yourself? And that's why I care, because they care. They put time and effort into this. Like, I won't get too off topic, but I see, people when they're like, I want a video game, I don't care about, Mario or insert this thing here. I care about the mechanics and things like that. And I understand that to a degree, but I'm like, the reason we care about these characters, the reason I want to see more Donkey Kong or insert thing here is because I love these characters. The mechanics are great and all that, but you can't just give me, you can't make a Smash Brothers with a cardboard box and say, oh, the mechanics are really great. That's great and all, but it's like, I'm playing as a cardboard box. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's why I really chafe when people say Super Smash Brothers is not canon, or going back to they're all just animated toys, they're not the actual characters. And I'm like, why are you trying to deprive yourself of so much fun? And it's all just the difference in people's brains. I mean, the whole left brain, right brain thing is not as valid as it used to be pushed. You know, we're a lot more complicated than that, but people do have different ways of viewing and analyzing and processing the world around them. And for me, and I think you, and for a lot of our audience, we actually do care about world building. We care about the immersion. I know, there's this whole high-minded, it's dumb to care about lore or in-game history, and none of that matters. And it's, for one, it's all about keeping perspective. You can lose yourself in a fictional world as a source of joy, so long as you don't lose your tether to the real world itself. You know, care about things that matter, but it's okay as a hobby to have that escapism. I reject the idea that there is a wrong way to consume media. Unless you're
hurting people or something.
or you're watching Star Wars and you think it's pro-fascism somehow. I don't know, but yeah, it's just, it reminds me of, so comic books, Malik. I don't know how much you know about the history of comic books as a medium and an art form, but
I know a little here and there. I dabble.
The first generation of comic book writers, I'm talking about the 1930s into the 1940s, the people who created Batman and Superman, Captain America, they didn't grow up reading comic books because they read Pulp Fiction. They read
adventure serials,
dime novels, and that kind of stuff. And they also were influenced by comic strips in the newspaper, but comic books weren't a thing when they were growing up. So they were basically making it up as they went along. They were inventing a lot of the tropes and the customary things in superhero fiction in particular, just off the cuff. And then we got the second generation of comic book writers, 1950s into the 1960s. And this would have been the people who grew up reading that first generation of comic books. And they're the ones who then started to apply their own headcanons and their understanding of comic books via the prism of their fandom to their writing and started introducing that to comic books. And so that's when you would start getting like the multiverse, like this version of this character meets their past version when the continuity shifted. And it might have been somebody's headcanon when they were reading it as a kid, but then they made it a reality. So Donkey Kong Land in particular reminds me of that. It reminds me of the second generation of comic book writers applying how they would have done it had they been writing comic books when they were a kid. Donkey Kong Land knowingly, cheekily pokes fun at the idea of having this inferior handheld counterpart to a big console game. And it embraces it. It revels in it. And I saw that. I recognized it. And I think that's when I really became a die-hard lifer for Donkey Kong.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, like, Donkey Kong Land, and of course, such a big part of the summer of 95 for me, after Batman Forever died down a little bit. But, yeah, like, I basically, especially when I went on family vacations that year, and my family vacations were never spectacular, aside from when we would, like, later on, we would visit my grandparents in Florida, and I would get to go to places like Universal Studios. Unfortunately, long before there's a Donkey Kong Country theme park. But
dang,
generally my family vacations were visiting the extended family in Pennsylvania. And it's like, whatever. Because I was the only child, so I would always have to make my own fun along the way. And so I would get lost in my brain. I would get lost in my imagination. And that summer, I got lost in Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Land. So I brought Donkey Kong Land with me. I brought the instruction book with me. I brought that issue of Nintendo Power with me. And I would absorb everything Donkey Kong Land had to offer while also feverishly reading every scrap of information about the upcoming Donkey Kong Country 2. And it was just this all-consuming echo chamber in my skull. It was basically the Kongversation before the Kongversation existed, and I didn't have anybody to talk about this with, so I was just talking to myself about Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Land, and to a lesser extent, Rare. Because I didn't know Rare was going to build a whole shared universe out of this at this time. Like, I knew Killer Instinct was a thing. I knew it was coming out for the Super Nintendo, but I never thought, oh, they're going to maybe put Funky Kong in Killer Instinct.
God, can you imagine?
I can imagine. That would have been awesome, honestly.
Ugh, I don't want to see Funky Kong get shot by Fulgore.
Well, it's shot with lasers. That's the very soft version of getting shot.
Eh.
You just get a little singed fur. It's fine.
Or fall off a building. I don't want to see that. Not Funky.
It's like
Cranky, sure.
When Funky drops his, like, weed pipe on himself, he burns himself all the time. It's the same thing as getting blasted by Fulgore.
I guess. Or burned by cinder.
Yeah. I think Funky would have been an amazing secret. Honestly, had Killer Instinct 2013... had the conventions of that game been in play, like the fighting game conventions of the modern day been in play when Killer Instinct came out back in the mid-90s, yeah, Funky would have been an unlockable character or DLC. Absolutely, that would have been the case. But it wasn't. And so I wasn't thinking about, they're really going to build a shared universe of like every Rare game that comes out will be part of this. But I was thinking like, oh, what if we got spin-offs? What if there was a Squawks the Parrot? I wasn't thinking in terms of Squawks yet, because Squawks was just the flashlight holding guy in Torchlight Trouble.
Gave you seizures.
Giving you seizures, yeah. But I was thinking like, what if, maybe Rambi would get a game? Maybe?
Rambi's posh something or other. Then you immediate regret. It's like, no.
Rambi's haberdashery, where he opens a hat store.
Rambi's high class haberdashery.
Yeah, there we go. Honestly, yeah, you know what? If anything would get me on board with Posh Rambi, it would be Nintendo announcing Rambi's high class haberdashery for the Nintendo Switch 2 during their next non-Donkey Kong related Nintendo Direct.
And he stands on two legs at the register.
Yeah. Oh, hello, and welcome to Rambi's High Class Haberdashery.
What can I do for you this afternoon, my fine chap?
Nothing about him being a rhino comes in play at all.
Nope, not at all. It's just a guy's...
Malik, what did you think about Rambi in Bananza, in the Bananza Direct? What do you think? How does Rambi look?
Now, I shared some sketches that I did, being the artist that I am, where I was like, what if he looked more dinosaurian in Bananza? He looks good. I like how he looks, but there's a part of me that feels like, what if he got a little more radical with his design? What if they made him a little more, like I said, dinosaurian, or like, yeah, like what if he had droopier eyes and had a big dumb smile with his tongue sticking out? I would like that, but Rambi gets a pass from me. But I know there's some people who'd be like, don't change him. But I was like, maybe give him a hump in the front. Like, maybe give him a saddle. Well, he had like one of them thingies in the Direct.
Yeah.
Like that backpack or whatever.
Yeah,
so that's something. I like that. Pack mule Rambi.
Yeah, he had the pack and the saddle and the girder blanket for Cranky.
So that's something. I do like that. Yeah, but Rambi gets a pass.
Well, Rambi was in Donkey Kong Land, one of two animal buddies, along with Espresso. And I thought it was so interesting. And maybe this was like looking at things like Mortal Kombat for the Game Boy and seeing like, oh, they excluded Johnny Cage from the Game Boy version of Mortal Kombat, but the Game Gear version of Mortal Kombat, they excluded Kano. How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, ooh, so like,
it's like why?
If you want to experience the totality of Mortal Kombat's roster in a handheld form, you have to own both handheld versions. I just thought that was like, that intrigued me as a kid, because I'm like, how would a Mortal Kombat diehard deal with that? And I wanted to know. But there were no Mortal Kombat podcasts to listen to. Like, it was just all just in the fevers of your imagination. Like, fanzines were a thing, but again, you would have to live in an area where you could have access to them. So anyway, I mean, I know the internet was in its infancy back then, but I wasn't online in 1995. So I didn't know.
I was in my literal infancy, so I didn't know.
You were. Yeah, you were a newborn. You had that new baby smell.
Yeah, I can't remember what that smells like.
Well, yeah. I only know what I smell like right now.
I smell passable.
I smell like soap.
You smell better than I do. It's hot where I am.
So, yeah, I looked at, like, they picked two animal buddies to appear in the game. And honestly, there weren't many returning characters in Donkey Kong Land. It was Donkey, Diddy, Rambi, Espresso, and King K. Rool. Cranky played a large part in the story, but he didn't actually appear in the game. And then there were returning baddies, Critters and Naughties and Slippas. Zingers played a big part. But I don't know, because I looked at Donkey Kong Country and it had 5 animal buddies, 4 of them rideable. This only had 2, and then I didn't know at the time who would be returning in Donkey Kong Country 2, I think I just assumed it would be the same animal buddies coming back. The idea of new animal buddies or animal buddies in lieu of returning animal buddies, really, I wasn't entertaining that yet. So, I don't know, like, I really, especially once Donkey Kong Country 2 came out, appreciated Donkey Kong Land having Espresso in it when Espresso did not come back in Donkey Kong Country 2, because it made it feel like, even though Espresso wasn't in DKC 2, Espresso wasn't being retired forever, because he was in Donkey Kong Land, which just came out a couple of months before DKC 2. So it really made the whole animal buddy swap with Radley coming in instead of Winky, and the introduction of Squitter and Clapper and Glimmer. It made that go down easier, I think. And it made me feel like, okay, well, Espresso's not in this one, but Espresso could be in Donkey Kong Land 2 or Donkey Kong Country 3 or Banjo Pilot.
Or he could have like a legion of ostriches in a remake of the sequel that is not out yet, like 10 years later or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe there will be a thing called Espresso Racing if there's ever handheld technology that's able to basically recreate this Super Nintendo adventure. I had that exact thought.
Yeah, exactly. I know you did. I know you're not lying to me because you're Hyle Russell.
No, I speak no lies. The Donkey Kong Land story is actually what happened. But yeah,
believe it, folks.
It made me really excited about the idea of only some characters will come back in each game, and then they'll be supported by new characters. I know there's all this discourse as well, with people peering in from the outside to Donkey Kong fandom and seeing how people are reacting to Donkey Kong Bonanza. And they think Donkey Kong fandom doesn't like anything new. We don't like new things. We only want the same characters coming back time and time again, which isn't the case, believe me. And I'm honestly excited about all the new things at Bonanza, because Bonanza is doing enough to celebrate the whole history of Donkey Kong. And I feel like Bonanza is seeing me as a Donkey Kong fan. You know, it's not afraid to reference things like the Northern Hemisphere, Glimmer the Anglerfish. It's not going out of its way not to reference anything from Donkey Kong's past, aside from maybe the arcade games, like Retro's games did.
Right.
So, I love new things. I just love that healthy mix of old and new. And you know what? Donkey Kong Land taught me that. Donkey Kong Land made me look at the changes with Donkey Kong Country 2 and say, you know what? This is okay, and this is good, and this is exciting. Because I bet I will grow to love Rattly the Rattlesnake just as much as I love Winky the Frog. I will love Wrinkly just as much as I love Candy Kong. Candy Kong, a character we all loved and adored in 1994. And
oh yeah, absolutely. Unconditionally.
Who the hell is Swanky Kong? We asked when we learned about Swanky Kong. Well, we didn't say it doesn't matter because Nintendo doesn't care about Donkey Kong. No, we were like, I want to know who Swanky Kong is. What a fun, interesting idea for a character. So,
I'd love to see that guy peel out and die in a movie.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, you know what? I bet one day there's going to be a movie where we see this guy in a big fiery explosion. Exact words.
Late
1995.
I had that vision in 2007 when I played DKC 2 for the first time. It's like, man, this guy is going to show up in a movie. It's going to be great. It's like, there he is. Now he's dead. Yes. Best movie of the year.
Yeah, when Wrinkly died in 1999, I remember saying, God, I can't wait to see how everyone else bites it.
Well, so far we've got two Kongs that have bit it canonically.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in Bananza. I can't even say that with a straight face.
The nice thing is they're all going to be underground, so it saves money on burial.
Just leave them where they die.
Yeah, so I think so much of my underlying philosophy towards how I view this series was laid down by Donkey Kong Land. And that's why it's just so interesting to me that we're celebrating its 30th anniversary on the precipice of this bold new era for Donkey Kong, this exciting new era for Donkey Kong that really does seem to be embracing everything from the past 44 years. It's such a fascinating parallel, the parallel bird. And it's like, it's really making me reflective and all the more appreciative that Donkey Kong Land was pushed by Tim Stamper and was designed by Andrew Collard, and Paul Makachek programmed it the way they all did. Paul Makachek was the one who pushed for it to be an original game, and unfortunately was not involved with Donkey Kong Land 2, and so Donkey Kong Land 2 suffered as a result. But I really think their influence is why I'm still doing this today.
I think so, yeah. And again, just tiny little humble little Game Boy game. No one was really thinking about what this is going to do to a certain individual 30 years down the line. But
it's not just me, though. It's like, how many people have been brought in to our community, or who listen to this podcast, or who have just thought about Donkey Kong in a slightly different way because of you or me or Matt or Cameron or Dustin, or like anybody who's ever stepped up to the microphone or streamed anything or done anything in any close proximity to DK Vine. It's just like, my God, the butterfly effect, or the flying pig effect in this case.
The hogwash effect, yeah.
The hogwash effect, yeah. That's what this is. Ah, God. So, yeah, I mean, like, Donkey Kong Land, and this is also why, again, I'm so glad it's on NSO. I know there's all these people, the frugal consumer, who they don't like the idea of a paid subscription service, but it helps facilitate this. And in my point of view, Nintendo's been so hit or miss about game preservation, about making their past games accessible to their ever-evolving audience down the ages. And NSO is the first time it feels like there's actually been a reliable way to not only play these games, but for people to discover these games. Because they did have Donkey Kong Land on the Nintendo eShop back in 2014. But how many people actually went out of their way to purchase it and to download? I mean, I know I did. I know you probably did.
Oh, yeah, I did. But I knew I was like, I feel so alone when I bought them.
But now, because of NSO, and yes, the frugal consumer is like, well, you know, actually, I feel like Nintendo just, they charge too much money. They're shaking down their customers. And I just have to take a stand when it comes to Nintendo Switch Online. I will not. I will not abide by it. It's fine. You know, we all have to live by our own personal ethical code. I'm glad NSO exists because more people are getting into older games as a result.
Totally. Like, I haven't bought the N64 expansion pack, but that's just because personally I have an N64 that still works, but
yeah.
But I do like the Game Boy stuff where it's like, oh, cool. I probably would have never picked like insert game here up if I didn't. And it's like, it's got a backlight. It's got all these nice little features, rewind features. This is so nice. When I do take advantage of NSO, I have a good time. I'm not playing it like, this sucks. I'm paying for this. No, it's a nice service.
Yeah. And again, Donkey Kong Land is a product of its time. Don't go into it expecting the same crisp gameplay of a Donkey Kong Country game. Expect to run into some curious things, like when you fall too far, the screen just counts you as being dead. But you know what?
Yeah.
Embrace that and use the save states. Use the rewind feature if you have to. Just roll with the punches, jump with the punches, and look at the game the way we do. Look at the game through the eyes of its era and what it introduced and contributed to Donkey Kong. And I think it might start to grow on you a little bit. It might, at the very least, earn your respect, even if it doesn't earn your actual genuine affection.
Yeah, like when I was playing it earlier today before we started recording, and yeah, I experienced some of the jank that you mentioned. I died when I was like, "What? There was a platform right beneath me," but at the same time, I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of fun." I like how Espresso lives up to the fact that if an actual ostrich jumped on you, you would actually die.
Yeah, they're kind of terrifying.
Kind of terrifying incarnate. I don't like ostriches.
Have you ever been to a safari park where the ostriches will try to actually bully you for food?
I have been to a safari park. There is one in the area of southern Ontario, but I don't remember seeing an ostrich.
Okay. Well, that's because you're still with us. Had you seen an ostrich, you might not have made it to 30.
I don't think so. I don't think I would have even made it to 10.
And it's also amusing to me that there's all this discourse and debate about whether Donkey Kong has lore right now. Because Donkey Kong Land effectively invented Donkey Kong lore, Malik.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know this. I know most of our audience knows this, but in case any writers or editors from, I don't know, Kotaku are tuning in because, I don't know, you took a wrong turn on YouTube or Spotify somewhere. Let me lay it down for you. Let me explain exactly what I mean. So not only do we have the whole meta aspect of Cranky Kong, which you're like, that's not lore, that's just loosey-goosey storytelling. All right, well, fuck off. But Donkey Kong Land really took what Donkey Kong Country created. Donkey Kong Country reimagined Donkey Kong, but it didn't really root it in what had come before in any meaningful sense. We knew Cranky Kong was the original Donkey Kong. And from that, we could surmise that maybe the modern Donkey Kong was either an adult Donkey Kong Jr. or some relation. And that was basically it. It was like, oh yeah, but Donkey Kong Island? Where did that come from? The Kong of Jungle? Like, where's Mario? Where's Pauline? Where's Stanley? Nobody was saying where's Stanley back in that era.
Nope.
No, but
he might be dead.
He might be. He might have gassed himself. Squirting all those fumes, not having the proper protection.
In the 80s, when they didn't care about that stuff, it's like, I'm just inhaling whatever. He's probably Stanley the Dead Man. I'm
sure his family tried to sue the makers of the pesticides, but They probably didn't. There might have been a class action settlement that Stanley's family was just one participant in. That would be a good story. If Nintendo's really getting into the history of Donkey Kong, that would be a good prequel right there.
Oh heck yeah! I'd watch that. I'd play that.
But yeah, with Donkey Kong Country, there was nothing to really connect it, even to Donkey Kong 94 at the time. Donkey Kong 94, or just Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, a critically beloved game, and honestly one that I think Nintendo fandom has kept relevant for longer than Donkey Kong Land has been kept relevant. Donkey Kong Land had such a big impact on me, but I know Donkey Kong 94 is what most people hold up as like the Donkey Kong game. It's funny, like when Donkey Kong 94 turned 30 last year, I got a couple offers to like write some things for different publications, and I had to turn them all down because I was like, actually, I'm not really into that one. And they're like, what? But you're the Donkey Kong guy. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm okay.
I'm not the Donkey Kong 94 guy.
I'm the Donkey Kong Country guy, and there's a difference. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. Let's rap for a bit. Let me tell you a few things.
But yeah, like I respect Donkey Kong 94, and it is probably the definitive version of the arcade game or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just not my thing. So when Donkey Kong Country came out, I just remember thinking, like, I don't really know how this works with what came before. Like, I don't know how Cranky fought Mario or where that took place or how it relates to Donkey Kong Island. So I'm just going to ignore the backstory and treat it like it might have happened, but it didn't happen like it was laid out for us. Donkey Kong Land was the first game to start to pull it all together. Long before Donkey Kong Bananza dared to do it, Donkey Kong Land like took a stand and said, yeah, we can make this all work, because Donkey Kong Land introduced Big Ape City.
Oh, heck yeah.
The setting of the original Donkey Kong arcade game. Now, this is a little bit more complicated now, obviously, because Super Mario Odyssey decided it was going to introduce New Donk City. Is New Donk City the same location as Big Ape City? Are they separate? Did Nintendo just forget about Big Ape City? Did they decide they were just going to ignore Big Ape City because Nintendo doesn't care about Donkey Kong lore, and neither should you? I don't know. It is complicated, and it is something I look forward to figuring out. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to put in the time, and I'm going to reconcile them as best I can. But Donkey Kong Land did it first. Donkey Kong Land said, oh yeah, you know what? There is a city that Donkey Kong 81 took place.
I know that in Donkey Kong 94, that city is called Big City.
Yep.
So it's all connected. I say it's all connected. Maybe DK called it Big Ape City, or Cranky called it that because it's like he's egotistical. It's like, this is my city. But maybe it was called Donk City. Okay, I'll need to think about this a bit more too. But yeah, I have my own headcanons.
Sure. Yeah, it's something I think we're gonna wade into the waters of as we approach Donkey Kong Bonanza's release. But yeah, Donkey Kong Land did it. Donkey Kong Land also went back and started fleshing out the Kremlings a little bit more. We still didn't know anything about Crocodile Isle or the Kremling source, Crocodile Core, any of that. But Donkey Kong Land noticed, hey, you know, those temples in Donkey Kong Country, they have Kremling architecture. What does that mean? And Donkey Kong Land decided, oh, well, the Kremlings must have had this Greco-Roman civilization in antiquity that, like, encompassed Donkey Kong Island and beyond, and it was the Kremlantis Empire. And that alone just really juiced my imagination and really made me start, like, thinking about the relationship between the Kremlings and the Kongs. And yeah, I mean, even before Donkey Kong Country 2 established this is the Kremlings' home island, this is how they evolved, all of that great stuff, Donkey Kong Land was making us think about this world before the events of the games. And I don't know if it would have all really hung together as well as it did had Donkey Kong Land not done it.
I know. It just hearing all this just being described, like, this stuff, I already know it like the back of my hand, which might be changing as I get older, but it just makes me smile to think about, or it's like, oh man, look, Kremlantis, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear all these stories about, like, how did it sink? What happened? Why did they make all these, this civilization here? Why did they hop over to Crocodile Isle? It's just beautiful to think about.
I mean, it's the fun part of being a fan and really losing yourself or getting to escape into a fictitious world is those details. And people mock those details, and people mock the people who get excited about those details. Here's the thing, Malik. I'm also somebody who just loves storytelling. I love that aspect of humanity and culture. And I'm also really into history and how things evolve over time. And that stuff fascinates me. That's just how my brain is. I'm a storyteller. I get off on it. And so the fact that Rare went that extra step and really solidified a lot of this in the first year of the modern Donkey Kong series. Oh my God. It's why I became a Rare fan, because I was like, oh, they're going to go the extra mile. And you know what? We talk about Nintendo as this monolithic entity that just always does things the same way. Nintendo is changing. Nintendo isn't the same Nintendo that they were 10, 15 years ago. Nintendo has got a crop of younger talent that are doing things differently. And that younger talent were also weaned on things like Rare's Donkey Kong. And we're seeing that. I mean, even before Donkey Kong Bananza, we saw that Splatoon, Super Mario Odyssey. Those are not the ways you would traditionally make Nintendo games. It focused and celebrated things that would not ordinarily be prioritized.
For sure, yeah.
That's why I'm not worried about Bananza, because I know Bananza is following in that tradition. Bananza is also being made by people who love these games as much as we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's been evident from, like, the very first trailer. Like, of course, the naughty fossil, for example, and it's like, okay, we're good, we're in good hands. After I saw that fossil, I'm like, I am looking forward to this game so much because it speaks to me. It speaks to all of us.
The fact that the game itself might be taking place underneath the northern Kremisphere, like, that is a very real and honestly very likely scenario. That is just, it still doesn't seem like it's plausible. Like, I have to check myself because I see people speculating, and I want to chime in and be like, manage your expectations a little bit, because yeah, it would be cool if they reference the Northern Hemisphere, and then I have to stop myself and be like, wait, they are referencing the Northern Hemisphere. It's actually in the game. Oh, wow.
It's like okay.
It's the same feeling I got when I played Donkey Kong Land, when I read the instruction book and I saw what Rare was doing. I was like, is this really happening? Like, I don't have to do the work. It's being done for me. Like, the people making this game are as weird as I am.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even weirder. Am I dreaming? Do I still have a pulse?
All right. Well, Malik, we have a couple calls to play. And
okay.
We haven't really talked about one aspect of Donkey Kong Land. So after we take the calls, and I want you to start thinking about it, I want you to think about Donkey Kong Land's original characters, specifically the original enemies, the original baddies that were in Donkey Kong Land. If you could restore any of them, bring them back as a prominent part of the Donkey Kong series going forward, which one would you pick? I want you to think about that. And everybody at home, I want you to think about that as well. I mean, you can shout it out when we're done with the calls. We won't hear it necessarily, but you can shout it out. All right, so let's play that first call.
Hello, Hyle and Malik. This is TJ. I'm calling in for Donkey Kong Land's 30th anniversary. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of people talk about the same things when they praise this game. It's definitely the most unique out of the three Donkey Kong Land games, the one that tries to separate itself most from the SNES counterpart. I like the original stuff it does, the Kremlings. I like the few original tracks it has that aren't just remixes. But I personally, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this game, and it's for one really petty reason. I'm actually, you guys know, I'm a massive Squawks the Parrot fan. And this game in particular, it's like the one blemish on Squawks' perfect attendance record. He's not in this, even though he's in Country, and he's in all the Donkey Kong Land games and Donkey Kong Country games after this. So I used to pride myself on Squawks, having that perfect attendance record, but or at least having the most appearances out of all the animal buddies. But this game, Donkey Kong Land, it's one of the few games that Randy has over Squawks. Squawks has Donkey Kong Country 3, he has Donkey Kong Land 3 over Randy, and Randy has this, and I believe he has the first Donkey Konga over Squawks. So they're a little more neck and neck, but yeah, that's a petty reason to hold something against this game. Obviously, it was a huge deal at the time, and it's really impressive that they got this running on the original Game Boy. So, yeah, I think this game definitely is worthy of respect. So I'm happy 30th Donkey Kong Land. In just a few months, I myself will know what it's like to hit that milestone. So thank you for taking the call.
Wow, everything's turning 30!
I know, sweet lord, what's going on here? Was everything done in 1995?
Apparently, Batman Forever, Malik, TJ, Donkey Kong Land.
That's all that matters.
No, so I can understand that if you are a hardcore Squawksaholic, then it would be difficult to not have, like, at the time though, when Donkey Kong Land was coming out and you were born after it, so, let me explain to you how things were in olden times, TJ. Squawks was not necessarily considered to be a major character until Donkey Kong Country 2 elevated him to, like, one of the most proficient and capable animal buddies. Torchlight Trouble was it for Donkey Kong Country, just that one appearance, because they couldn't get Donkey Kong's miner helmet working. And so they were like, well, let's just have a parrot. Let's just have a bird, hold a flashlight. We'll make it work that way. And it's kind of an afterthought. I mean, it's a fun afterthought, and it's kind of the thing that Rare would always do is instead of having this thing be some sort of functional tool, they would make it a character because somehow they knew fans would really find endearing and would really celebrate something if it was a character versus just this very blasé, basic element in the game itself. So they had the foresight to make it a character, and then they thought, what if we did more with this parrot? And it was Donkey Kong Country 2 that really turned our heads and made us think, Squawks is pretty cool. But at the time, Donkey Kong Land, like I said, like we weren't wondering where Squawks was. And looking back in retrospect, I'm kind of glad Squawks wasn't in it. Yes, it is a blemish on his perfect attendance streak, but Espresso, he needed that platform, especially with what was to come, or I should say what wasn't to come for him. Espresso stopped showing up in the next two Country and Land games, wasn't in Donkey Kong 64. Espresso didn't have his renaissance until the Game Boy Advance era, when we got Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance, when we got Banjo Pilot, the cameo of Espresso in that. And, Espresso was originally going to be in Donkey Kong Racing, and we were all like, holy shit, Espresso's coming back. But there's never that fear for Squawks, and indeed, Squawks has never been left wanting since Donkey Kong Land. Squawks was in Donkey Kong 64. Squawks showed up in Barrel Blast / Jet Race, even though I would say not being in the Konga games is probably a good thing at this point.
No one wants to be in Donkey Konga.
I am glad Donkey Konga 1 had Ellie. That was just a nice little bit of DKC 3 love at a time when DKC 3 didn't get much recognition. But yeah, like Squawks is in the theme park. Squawks was, of course, in the Retro Studios games. I know in a reduced capacity, but all the same, he was there.
Concept art for the Mario movie.
Yeah. Now, March Rose brings up, we haven't seen him in Bananza yet. And yes, that is surprising. Now, I feel like we barely scratched the surface with what we know about Bananza, considering they just kind of glossed over the fact that Diddy and Dixie host an entire Donkey Kong racing style racing game in Donkey Kong Bonanza. They didn't make that a featured part of the direct. We just saw them in footage and we were like, holy shit, what?
I was like, there it is.
So I would be surprised if Squawks does not show up, because so far the only three people from the theme park, the three characters from the theme park that we haven't seen in Bonanza are Squawks, Professor Chops. I know there's the Oink in fossilized form, but again, that's not Professor Chops. And
I hope it isn't.
Well, if people are time traveling all over the place, then yeah, maybe Professor Chops went back thousands of years, and that's how he met his end. But Tiki Tong is the third, and out of those three, I think the one we have the likeliest chance of seeing in Bonanza is Squawks the Parrot.
I think so too.
Chocolate Milk Drinker says, Professor Chops Lair, let's fucking go!
Oh, heck yeah. I can't wait. You know it's there.
Martro says Tiki Tong is the true secret villain. I would not be able to handle the riots that would ensue if that were the case. I walked into yesterday's direct with trepidation because I was just not ready to handle the discourse of when we didn't see K. Rool. Little did I know that K. Rool fans would handle it perfectly fine, and it would be the Pauline stuff that would set people off.
Yeah, who would have thought that? I didn't see that coming.
Like, I figured everybody was just kind of ready for it because it was an open secret at that point that Pauline was Odd Rock, or some variation of Pauline was Odd Rock. So I was kind of surprised that it became a scandal. But I guess if there are so many people who don't follow the ins and outs of Donkey Kong news, and so that direct was their first exposure to anything related to Bonanza since April 2nd.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, sweeties, you're all new here. let us direct you to the conversation.
Well, anyway, thank you for the call, TJ. Happy birthday in well advance.
Yes, happy advanced birthday.
Yes. Game Boy Advance birthday with ostrich racing. All right. Or excuse me, you would want parrot racing. I apologize.
Right.
All right. Let's take our second call.
Hello, Hyle. Hello, Malik. This is Emma, also known as Moomin Fini. I call for the Donkey Kong Land episode. Now, truth to be told, I was not born yet in 95, so my history with the game happens a long time after its initial release. And to be more precise, it was with the eShop release back in 2014. And I have a bit of a funny story about that. You probably remember Club Nintendo. It was like this reward system where you would have codes in your games and you could fill out the codes online and they would give you a survey and you would get coins and all that. But at the time when I was actively filling all these codes and all that, Donkey Kong Land was not yet available on the eShop, so I would leave at the end of every survey something along the lines of, please release Donkey Kong Land on the eShop. And I will do that for every single game, related or not. So I like to believe that I influenced them in some way. Maybe they eventually gave up and they said, fine, we're gonna give her Donkey Kong Land on eShop. So yeah, sure enough, eventually all 3 games came out on eShop and I bought them all. And I still enjoy them very much to this day, even the first one. Yes, it did not age with the most grace, but I still think it's an impressive game. And like I said, I never experienced it on the original Game Boy, so I never really had an issue with visibility or anything. And nowadays, I do own a physical copy of the game, but I still play it on a modded Game Boy with like a brand new LCD screen, so it's still crystal clear, even if I'm playing on a Game Boy. I think that's pretty much everything I had to say for this episode. Have a good one. See you.
Thank you so much for the call, Emma. I thought she was going to say, I wasn't born yet when Donkey Kong Land came out. I was born a couple months later in 1995. But I was like, wow.
Running gag.
What is happening here? But no, I hope you are responsible. I hope you are the one who brought it to the eShop back in the day. Because I know I said, like, having it on NSO is a step up from the eShop. But you discovered it on the eShop. I'm sure other people did as well. And that eShop release brought us one of the best Donkey Kong fandom tailored trailers we've ever had in recent history. Now 11 years ago, but the Donkey Kong Country and Land trilogies getting announced for the eShop all on the same day, bringing back the Play It Loud branding.
That was so cool. I mean, again, I wasn't there for that, but I understood the history and I was like, Play It Loud, and they're using the exact same shots from the commercials? That's so... What did we do to deserve this? We ain't Mario?
So I was using footage from it for one of my videos the other year, and I realized that they used some of the shots from the original commercial and from the DKC Exposed VHS, but they also like recreated some of it, and like from the ground up, including the text. Because then I had to recreate some of the text for my own purpose. And so it was just like, wow, this is just like a clone of a clone of a clone. Multiplicity, Michael Keaton. Was that 1995? I think that was 1995, that movie. Because
I've never heard of that movie.
Multiplicity was the movie Michael Keaton did. It was 1996, damn it. That would have been so cool.
Wrong. July 17th. It came out 29 years to when Bananza is going to come out. So that's
nice. Something. It's all connected. Yeah, Michael, that was the movie Michael Keaton, his most prominent role right after leaving the role of Batman when Val Kilmer took over for Batman Forever. So that's why my brain was just batting all around the mid 90s, trying to draw these connections. And anyway, yes. Batting around. He was not batting around anymore, that Michael Keaton. And in fact, by 1996, neither was Val Kilmer, because by then George Clooney was filming Batman and Robin. But anyway, I digress. Yes, Donkey Kong Land might not have aged gracefully, but I do think that out of all 3 Donkey Kong Land games, it is the one with the biggest influence. Still felt to this day, because Donkey Kong Land also, I've talked a little bit about, I think it came up on the Mario Kart World first impressions I did just the other week, where we're talking about the early days of Mario as a brand, as a franchise, and when there were not many games to choose from, to pull from for your merchandise, for your cartoons, whatever. And so Super Mario Brothers 2 loomed so much larger over everything than it does at any time past the early 1990s. And this just came up because I was talking about, it's a shame, Warts or Mouser or other Super Mario Brothers 2 mainstays haven't been in Mario Kart. And how weird it is for me, because I was really into Mario as a very young child in that era. And to me, because of the way they were marketed, because of the way they were pushed, those were essential Mario characters. And
of course.
I say that because in 1995 into 1996, there wasn't much in the way of Donkey Kong Country games. There wasn't much in the way of the modern Donkey Kong series, not counting the original 3 arcade games or Donkey Kong 94 or Donkey Kong Jr. Math or whatever, but they had to pull from whatever they could get. And so Donkey Kong Land has honestly more tie-in media than Donkey Kong Country 3 really has. Donkey Kong Land, you know where I'm going with this, right?
Maybe. I could be wrong.
So there were 3 kids novels written about Donkey Kong Country in the mid-90s. And one of them was, I believe, Donkey Kong Country Rumble in the Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one. It wasn't a retelling of Donkey Kong Land, but it used locations and settings from Donkey Kong Land. And it had like Donkey, Diddy, Cranky, and Funky going to Big Ape City. And like, yeah, like, of course they did, because at the time there's only 2 to 3 Donkey Kong games to pull from if you're trying to ride this wave of Donkey Kong Country mania. And I just think about like what kids back in those days got into Donkey Kong because of those novels. There must have been some, right?
Maybe at least one person?
At least one person. I mean, at the Scholastic Book Fair in their elementary school, and they're like, oh wow, oh golly, oh gee, there are Donkey Kong novels. I want those. I like monkeys. I like gorillas. I like ostriches. I like flying pigs.
I probably would have fallen for that if it was in my Scholastic Book Fair.
And then, even then, and this is kind of going back into the episode we did back in 2020, why Donkey Kong Land still matters, but when Retro Studios was doing research, when they were gearing up to do Donkey Kong Country Returns, they went back and they played the original 3 Donkey Kong Country games and the Donkey Kong Land games. And Donkey Kong Land in particular has a lot of its DNA in Retro's games as well. They pulled from a lot from Donkey Kong Land, including the design of the mole miners, inspired by the boss Hard Hat.
Mm-hmm.
You had the portals in Tropical Freeze, the secret exits, directly inspired from the end-of-level portals in the original Donkey Kong Land. Even the sky levels kind of have that inspiration from chimpanzee clouds in Donkey Kong Land. So Donkey Kong Land's influence, even if you don't realize it, even if you're unaware, it has had such a profound impact on the development of the Donkey Kong series, as well as Donkey Kong fandom. And on the occasion of its 30th birthday, I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah, what else can you say? Thanks.
But of course, there is impact, there is influence, but then there are direct continuations. There are bringing back some of the original elements that haven't been seen since 1995. And look, the whole game of what Donkey Kong characters would you like to see come back, it's a long, long list. And honestly, like, it's all of them. It's any of them. I don't give a rat's ass. Bring back the rat's ass. Bring back Neek. Bring back Sneak. Let's bring back Scavers from Jungle Beat. But it doesn't just have to be the rats and the mice. Bring back some of the original Donkey Kong Land characters. And I think, honestly, there's a better chance of this than even some of the Mario 2 characters coming back, like Mouser or Fry Guy. I would love to see Fry Guy in a Mario Kart. I just don't think it's going to happen. But there's a good chance, not a good chance, but a more realistic chance we could see a baddie from Donkey Kong Land. So I will say mine, and then you can say yours, okay?
Okay.
All right. This one, I mean, everybody knows what I'm going to say, right? It's probably the most identifiable original enemy from Donkey Kong Land, considering they were on the box art, and they are just one of the earliest enemies you encounter in the game. Hogwash the Flying Pig.
Mm-hmm.
Why the hell haven't we seen Hogwash the Flying Pig since 1995? It's honestly disgusting. I am insulted. I am outraged. I get violently ill at least once a week over the thought
trick
that
me acts up.
it starts flaring up and swelling, and I'm like, ooh, there's not going to be any hogwash this year.
And that's pure hogwash to me, ironically.
I love hogwash because hogwash also introduced me to the term hogwash. As a kid, you're not exposed to a very wide vocabulary. And so hogwash, I didn't know what hogwash meant. It's a term meaning nonsense. I didn't know the idiom when pigs fly. Hogwash introduced me to both.
Huh. You see, I knew both of those terms. I even knew like codswallop, but I didn't put two and two together. That's what they were making the joke out of until I was like an adult. I was like, I was stupid in that regard.
It's the best kind of joke because it's two jokes in one.
I like the one where in the manual when you see, I think when they went by Rashers, or maybe this was in the actual manual for Donkey Kong Land, when you see hogwash and it says, something's not kosher in Donkey Kong Land. It's like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah, you know what? That also introduced me to what the term kosher meant, because I'm not Jewish. I didn't know what being kosher meant, and that introduced me to that term as well. God,
it's beautiful.
I learned
so many
much.
layers.
So just like Donkey Kong Bonanza, there are so many layers. And the deeper we
hogwash layer.
What if we learned that hogwashes came from a layer in the underground world?
I could believe that, because it's like, what is this thing? This is ungodly.
I just think there's such a fun design and just such a fun concept that it's kind of unbelievable that they haven't been brought back. Like, Hogwash would have been a great baddie in the Cloud level, the Golden Temple level, in Donkey Kong Country Returns, and they didn't do it.
Imagine if they were the only returning character. I'd be like, you know what? This is fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, that's my vote. Hogwash. What about you?
So my vote, I would say Nemo.
Nemo. Now, for those unaware, the Cartoon Gamer is not referring to the Disney Pixar animated film Finding Nemo, which was that cute little clownfish.
Yeah. This one is not a cute little clownfish. It's a nightmare from thousands, millions of years ago.
This is more of a frown fish because this is a nautilus. It's the animated tentacles that really make this unsettling.
Yeah, and how it just like pushes forward like a real nautilus, which is the other name it goes by. But I was like, oh my god, I don't want to imagine what this looks like in 16 bits. I think this would just freak me. I would never, when I got a game over in Donkey Kong Country when I was like 5 years old, it disturbed me so bad. I remember I turned off the game for a week. If I saw Nautilus in 16-bit, I probably would have never made it past whatever level it would probably show up in. I was like, no, I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
It is nightmarish. It is unsettling. And look, this is a real animal. They just gave it big cartoony eyes.
Didn't make it cute. I think they're worse.
No, it's honestly even more frightening with the big eyes because it looks like just this Lovecraftian beast that will ensnare you with its tentacles and just make a mess out of your body.
There's no love in that craft.
No. All right, that was solid. You know what? Thank you. You might be deteriorating in body, but your mind is as sharp as ever, Malik. Yep. I salute you on your birthday, Malik. I give you this banana cake. Do you like banana?
Oh, I love banana.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're not in the same room. For as much as I like to keep up the fiction that we have a luxurious studio where we record these, we are separated by, I was going to say time and space, but I'm thinking about Pauline again. We are separated geographic distance. So here is an imaginary banana yellow cake for your birthday and for Donkey Kong Land's birthday, both turning 30. Effectively at the exact same time. So there you go. Everybody, let's give another round of applause to both Malik and Donkey Kong Land.
I just hope there's no acorn in this cake. Well,
Malik, you gotta save it. Conker's Pocket Tales doesn't turn 30 for another 4 years.
Oh, right. Sure. I still wouldn't put it past you.
Yeah, no, you just wait to see what I have planned for then. Let me tell you.
Hopefully I live that long.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.